hunger for glory, feeds the desire, the courage to look for a challenge, to feed your ambitions. To reach for greatness. To become the champion of champions.
Welcome back, ladies and gents, to another episode of the CCT podcast. I asked for the best two-looking guys here, but B-Dog and Sneaky Beaky were missing, so it's me and Dan taking you through the action here today. I think this is the first time we're both on a podcast, right? Or have you done one before? All right, nice. So CCT is blessed with our presence. How you doing, man? First and foremost, you doing all right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got the day off basically, so this is the only thing that I'm doing. I'm casting CCT the next week, but we've got a ton to talk about, man, because if we work it daily, right, or at least basically, and there's just so much action that I'm surprised every single time I open a different tab. I'm like, oh wait, this happened? Okay, that's crazy.
It feels like it's never ending, right? It's like the online finals obviously going on right now. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And then obviously we've got like all of these new regions. We've got Oceania, like we've got East Europe running right now. We have South America running again. Like, man, there is an awful lot. I feel like the Counter-Strike never ends at CCT. It's almost like unforgiving space when it comes to Counter-Strike. But that's always a good thing. We love a bit of that. Obviously, as you can see, we've got a few topics to talk about. We want to start with Series 2 of the online finals. Neither of us got to work it. I'm not sure how much you watched of it, but I enjoyed it an awful lot. Tried to keep up to date as best as I could. Obviously, the global finals is a massive thing as well, right, Dan? Like, I think we don't really get to talk about enough the fact that if you qualify from the CCT online tournament, you get to the online finals. The top two teams get to the global finals, right? So it is actually quite a massive thing. It was VP and Spirit that obviously came first and second, but I think we could talk a little bit about the bracket and stuff like that. Is there anything in particular that kind of surprised you this event? Because I was just running through the results and things like that. I don't think there was an awful lot that stood out to me. There's a couple of games that I can talk about, but is there anything you have looked at here?
I mean, Movistar Riders going out in the very first few rounds, but they had such insane competition, right? So they had to face Team Spirit. That was their first matchup. And then after that, they had to play Into the Breach. Another one that somehow made it further than Movistar Riders was Zero Tenacity. And, you know, there's just certain teams in my mind that have got that title of a typical CCT team. So you've got the people that kind of have the run-up. So a team like Aurora, right? At some point in my mind, they were a typical CCT team. Then they broke the mold. Then they managed to go through and kind of compete with the higher level Apex to a certain extent, I guess. But Zero Tenacity, another one of those teams who managed to qualify and then actually beat out players as well, or beat out teams, which is crazy. They managed to beat Into the Breach in the very first round. Apart from that, I think there's nothing really massively of note. Team Spirit came through firing, beating VP and sending them down to the lower bracket, but overall incredibly fun to watch, and I think one of the more stacked online finals.
Yeah, I was going to say, real quick, just to gloss over some of the invites, right? Like, we've got B&E, OG, Movi, VP were in the mixer for this one as well. The three North American teams, right? You've got Nouns, MIBR, Sojoga as well. Unfortunately, I think two of those teams get knocked out pretty much immediately, right? Sojoga goes out in lower bracket round one. MIBR and Nouns kind of like try and fight for their own. Nouns get knocked out in 9th, 12th. MIBR get knocked out 5th, 6th. They had actually an okay run in this tournament. It's really interesting to me that teams from North America come over to Europe and actually do pull off a few upsets, right? Because MIBR, you look at their run, they beat Anonymo to start things off, which isn't the craziest of opponent, right? I think Anonymo, obviously, that the Polish side have been struggling to get to grips with sort of what they're doing in Tier 2 right now and making that push towards 1.5. And then go into a game against B&E and then win 16-14, 16-14. I know this isn't a B&E side that looks RMR or major ready. It's been a bit of a drop off from them, but MIBR taking that in two is really impressive. Obviously, then eventually getting dropped to the lower bracket by Spirit, who go on to obviously basically trump the event, come second place, and then lose to Aurora, another side that have been so godly in CCT. But you look at the results of MIBR's defeats, right? 16-7 loss and a 16-14 loss to Spirit, and then they drop to the lower bracket against Aurora, lose 16-13, 16-14. This is probably the best shape I've seen MIBR in a little while.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something we'll get to later as well, because they did also play in Online Finals 3, where they had a decent run, so overall, really liking the new additions, and they've been able to really excel themselves, which is impressive. But what happened since then as well, because obviously, great, CCT Online Finals, that's now done. I think there were some crazy things that happened that I would like to highlight, because there's some more typical CCT teams here, Retro, that are starting to come through big time. And one of them is, yet again, it's got to do with Aurora Youngblood. You might have seen this come by, but they've been able, in their last 5 matches, they lost against Zero Tenacity, they've lost against Pompa, okay, but they beat Los Cagutos, they beat Falcons, and they beat Ecstatic. And for every single one of their players, this is the first time in a HLTV team. So the first team that they've ever got is Aurora Youngblood, and they've been able to take such massive upsets. And I don't know where this Russian talent keeps coming from, but it feels like they've just got a well that doesn't dry up.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that you bring up Aurora Youngblood, because obviously on the topic of online finals, Spirit had made changes to a company for some of their younger guns, right? Donk and Artfrost. I think it's only fair we bring them up because they've been having a really good few months in this Spirit side. I know they came second place in the tournament, but I feel like anyone that has watched a CCT game, specifically Team Spirit Academy when they were a thing, would know that we were kind of expecting that these boys would get the call up eventually, and I was already impressed on what they were putting out on the Spirit Academy side, and then they move up to Spirit, and it's like the jump, like, make no mistake about it, the jump between tier 2 and like 1.5 is so massive, because you have to play, you're practicing against some of the best teams, you're constantly playing against some of the better teams, and like Donk and Artfrost, it's literally just like they were playing play-ins, like they've not dropped off at all. It's crazy to me to see how well these guys are getting on. Obviously second in the event, only lost to VP. What do you make of VP, right? Because obviously we had a bit of a touchy period where it was like we had Chiron in for a bit, right? Obviously now VP repping the VP lineup as of now, with obviously Fame, Flit, Jame, Norbert, and then Mir as their new fifth. At the time of the finals, they were playing with Kicker as well, if I'm not mistaken, who wasn't having the greatest of events. So VP, like, on the map right now, tier 2, I mean, you expect them to do well. They're currently 10th in the world at the time of the recording this. Expected to win the tournament, but like, obviously they're playing in Pro League as well. They're playing against 9Z today, if I'm not mistaken. They're looking better. They are looking better. I will give them that. But I don't know. I think that they've been on a bit of a streak. They need this Pro League season to go well for them to qualify to that. You know, well, to get those extra ESL ranking points and what have you, because it's a very important time, right, in the transition between Go and 2, because HLTV points are going to mean an awful lot more, because the start of CS2, you're gonna need the points to get invited to tournaments. That's the sad reality.
Just a quick side row, because I think it's interesting with CS2 obviously coming up. I saw B&E also posting on Twitter that, hey, we're looking for scrims in CS2, so they're fully prepping up and taking that leap earlier than some teams might, so they could get a head start, which could also have to do with kind of their drop off in performance, because they've just been playing that more. And if you're even remotely following it, you've been seeing a whole lot of things that it feels massively different. It feels weird going back, and it's just a pretty big change that you need to get adjusted to. So it's the same game but different mechanics or slightly. But back to Virtus Pro now, I feel like they make an incredible case to nerf the saving, because this has got nothing to do with how they play, because I am of the opinion play what makes you win the game, and I do like that they're calling these weird buys. I think I saw one come by where they had money to buy up everything, but they went for like a Galil 2 AKs or something like that. Probably an AWP instead of one of the AKs, but I don't know. I feel like their play style could have a bit more intrigue in it, not only for the general viewer, but also for a fan of VP, because you don't want to be lining up for a game and think, oh, I'm gonna watch my team again, and then sit still and watch nothing, watch them save for incredibly long. So I would like to see them switch it up. I don't know whether the CS2 bomb radius is going to be the solve of that, though.
I think there is a solution coming in CS2, and that is obviously MR12. We're shortening half times now, so realistically, you're not going to have the greatest of time to go and get rounds, right? Like, saving is going to be, I feel like, a little less important, going for these like gambly 3v3s and trying to put up like, you know, if you lose a site, you only get 12 rounds on a CT side, for example. And I know VP, as you say, massive advocates for James saving his AWP and things like that. And we'll still see situations where James walks away with his AWP, and, you know, like maybe like Norbert follows him with an AK or an M4 or whatever. Like, we're still going to have those, but I feel like for me at least, heading into CS2, there's going to be a lot less saving, and I'm interested to see how that dynamic changes. VP are one of those sides that definitely can springboard and benefit off the back of these CS2 changes. I find it really interesting as well. HLTV, I'm not sure if you saw, did an article about CS2 and how many teams are practicing CS2 right now. I'm just going to quickly try and pull it up on my monitor so I can make sure I'm getting this right, but I read about it last night, and it says out of the top 30 teams, a couple of them didn't respond, but only Vitality, Gamer Legion, Monty, and NIP are scrimming on CS2. So clearly, there's some intuition for most of these teams that they're going to be saving a little bit more time and putting more time into Counter-Strike Go rather than 2. But it's really interesting because basically, for a CCT viewer, when we know, you'll know about when we transition into 2 or when we stay on Go or whatever, which makes things really interesting because, you know, it's rumored that it's coming out on Wednesday, which is tomorrow as the time of recording this. We're recording this on Tuesday the 26th. So this time tomorrow, Dan, like, we're counting down the hours to see if CS2 is coming out. And it's like, well, for the future of CCT at least, I know we've not got long in comparison to how long we've spent here casting CCT, but like, for example, the global finals could actually be on CS2, and I mean, by the looks of things, they are going to be, and that's going to be super cool to see.
I mean, more likely rather than not, right? Because we've still got 3 months left of 2023, and then the global finals, the main thing we know about it is that it's in 2024. So the likelihood of that then being in CS2 and throwing a massive switch up for every single team that's qualified. I mean, obviously, you're not going to run a tournament saying, oh, yeah, hey, we'll still play that on the old game, even though it's like 5 months ago at that point. So I do think it's a very interesting switch up, and also cool to see that some teams are now starting to make the switch over. It's kind of similar to when we switched from 1.6 over to Go. That's where wait, it's so far back. It's actually Source that we swapped over from.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, so something in that sense and didn't sound correct, but, you know, you had that run-up as well. A lot of teams started to make that move, and I think NIP was actually one of the first ones that started acknowledging the CSGO tournaments, or at least started, like, anticipating for it. That being said, though, I do want to focus on what happened since the CCT Online Finals, because I'm sure that we've all heard of this team, Space. It's a team that kind of has similarities to Aurora Youngblood, where it's another CIS team, this time not full Russian, but I think it's got N0 is from Kyrgyzstan, but they managed to win CCT East. And not just that, but they beat ITB, they beat Big, they beat Monty, they beat Sampi, they beat Preezy, Nine Pandas as well. All massive teams, and this team had to come through the open qualifiers at some point, and everybody was kind of looking at them like, who the hell are they? And probably still when they are playing in the CCT North, where they qualified in the top 16, people will probably be looking at that top 16 and thinking, but who are Space? But they've been taking big names, man.
Yeah, they existed back in May. Trunic was the newest addition to that team back in sort of early May, if I'm not mistaken. They went from Hydra to ex-Hydra, ex-Hydra to Space. So, like, they've found an org now by the looks of things, or they've rebranded. I don't know what the situation is, but they were part of Hydra, and they are a team, as you mentioned, that have been on the rise in East Europe. We'll circle back to the rankings, Dan, because I think that'll be a thing we talk about later on. I want to jump ship, and I want to talk about Online Finals number 3. You know, we got distracted a little bit, excited by CS2, as a lot of people at home probably are as well. We want to talk about Online Finals number 3 because it finished up yesterday. Obviously, it was one win versus MIBR Grand Final, but a repeated name there in MIBR we'll come back to. I want to start from the beginning, though. And I want to gloss over the teams again, and then we could talk about maybe matches that surprised us. We've got 0-0 Nation in there this time, 1 win, Ultimate Attacks, Aurora, Legacy, ITB, MIBR, OG, Preezy, Sinners, Sprout, Monty, Harvu from the Western European circuit as well as LFO. And then from South America, we had Sharks and Paqueta. Nice to see, obviously, the Brazilian scene getting some love now that we're currently leading into Series 12 of the online league. So their curtains being drawn eventually. So one last stab for Sharks and Paqueta. We could start with those boys as well, because Sharks, they got knocked out in lower bracket round 2, lost against one win, lost against ITB, 2 pretty hard matchups, play against Preezy. Oh, sorry, they beat ITB, then move on to lower bracket round 2, lose to Preezy. That's it, their tournament's over. Other team in Paqueta, take a map off Monty, decent start. I actually had high hopes for them. Watching that game and how Paqueta played, they beat them on Anubis, which is like Monty's signature map, right? I feel like Monty loved picking Anubis. It was their selection in the series as well. They were called Selva at the time. Obviously, drop down to the lower bracket, lose to Sinners, again, take a map. It's always hard to talk about these South American teams because the comparisons we get is like, well, you're a tier 2 team. You're at the top of tier 2 in South America playing against some of the best tier 2 teams in Europe. And even I wouldn't even push it to tier 2. You've got like Aurora in there, OG in there, one win in there, Preezy as well is a name that I'd even suggest at the top of tier 2. Some of these teams even border in like the bottom of tier 1, like the 1.5s. Well, like it kind of just it happens, right? When you move from a region that doesn't have the most structure to a region that is so built up on tournaments, it's going to be very hard. And I've got to give it to Paqueta at least. Taking a map off Monty and taking a map off of Sinners, respectable. But another, what feels like at least, like CIS ran tournament, right? Obviously, one win making it to the grand finals. Monty having 3 Ukrainian players as well. They had a pretty deep run in this tournament. Obviously, Legacy had a pretty deep run. They were also a Brazilian team. Lato, Dumao, NQZ, Nekiz, Coldzera. I left them out because I want to touch on them a little bit more in a second. Any teams in here that disappointed? I think OG is the obvious one, right, Dan?
I've made a little ranking of teams that I think underperformed and teams that I think that overperformed. So I'll say which teams I thought underperformed, and this is in order. So from most disappointing to least disappointing, and it goes OG, and that's first, most disappointing, ITB, then Sprout, then Aurora even, because they really didn't get far. I mean, Aurora, they dropped against Alternate Attacks in lower bracket round 2. And then even Monty in there when they lose lower bracket quarterfinals, which I don't think it's a horrible result, but I do think it's under the bar for a team that is amongst the top 15 currently in the world in terms of ranking.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, right? Because obviously we were talking about Aurora, praising them very highly in Online Finals number 2. It's like they actually did quite well in that event. You know, they were pushing buttons. They were trying to get over boundaries. They made it all the way to that lower bracket final where they played VP and eventually lost. They came third in online finals 2, get a chance in online finals 3, and then, as you say, bomb out. Basically second last, right? They bomb out in the lower bracket round 2. They win one game, one BO3 the entirety of this event. Not very good for them. OG is another one. Again, like, I can kind of reason with OG a little bit because obviously they are going through some restructural things and they are trying to build in a new team. Well, technically, a new core of Fasha, Keto, and Regali that have only been in the roster for 2 months. So still trying to develop, I think, their roster, but for namesake, they should be doing a lot better than that. I don't think there's any deny.
I feel like when I watched them play looking for Org, I mean, they lost 2-0, and they just looked so flat. And I know that they're going through that restructuring, but it looked like they didn't even know that you could play this game like a team. Everything was individual. They went solo, got flashed, got beaten. And it just kind of staggered me that didn't even go to a third map, where I reckon they still would have had a better chance. But it's very disappointing to watch OG in its current form. I feel like they could have been doing a whole lot more, but we'll see as they take these kinds of losses, because then you kind of get accelerated more to play more and get yourself focused, locked into the game, instead of just, oh, hey, we're still OG. We're still a fantastic team. No, you need to have that little factory reset, get back on your feet again. But they lost against Looking for Org, who then lost against Alternate Attacks, and that's another team that I want to highlight, because they started in that similar-ish fashion when they had 2 new players, Spitty coming through together with Slacks. And as soon as they joined, because Alternate Attacks were struggling before that, as soon as they joined, I thought, okay, this Alternate Attacks lineup is going to be popping off from now on. Turns out I was wrong. From that moment on, then they started struggling a little bit. But now in this online finals, man, they've hit it. I feel like they're finally in the form that they've been looking for. Spectacular. Frieza stepped it up as well, together with Perks, who was really struggling on the openers. This Alternate Attacks lineup, they could be climbing a whole lot further.
Yeah, Alternate Attacks for me are on a very similar page to Preezy right now, but I think you've got to give more kudos to the German side. They're 5 players that maybe namesake, if you've been watching Counter-Strike a little while, you know of Speedy and of Slacks, right? Two very dominant players. They served their time in Sprout. Obviously, you've got Orzek, Perks, and Freeze in there as well. You mentioned some of those names. It's that Preezy Alternate Attacks game, the lower bracket semi-final. Alternate Attacks get 4th place, Preezy get 3rd. I'm gonna kind of barrel in Preezy to the same conversation as Alternate Attacks, right? Because it was both of these teams that started playing these online CCT tournaments, started playing your region locked events, getting a few invites, having to basically grind from the grounds up. Both of which make it to this online finals. Both of which overperform by a massive amount, right? They play some unbelievable Counter-Strike. Preezy's run, I just quickly highlight, beat Alternate Attacks in the opening game, lose to MIBR, who obviously have a great event, and we'll touch on those in a second, beat Sharks, beat Sinners, beat Monty, right? Like, for namesake, Preezy have not been together for a very long time, and they have been owning in this event so far. Just to give a bit of a rundown, 4 players of Ultex, TMB, Nikadoz, and Refresh have only been in this roster a month. 30 days they've been on this team for. They've played 88 maps of Counter-Strike together, though, being in this Preezy side. They've been grinding. They've been working hard. You've got to give it to them. It's the exact same situation as Alternate Attacks, and that is that both of these teams really trying to push for results at the end of CSGO, knowing that this cycle is eventually going to come to an end. And finally, we're seeing this team synergy click. It's about translating that into CS2. And I'm excited to see how things go for those 2 teams, because both really did perform well. Preezy came 4th. Alternate Attacks came 4th. Preezy came 3rd. You can't bash 2 teams that have been together for not very long, beating some of the best talent that we have in Tier 2, in CCT.
And it's crazy as well, because as soon as Slacks came into the roster, which at this point is a while ago already, he was fantastic. He was absolutely amazing. By far the star of the team. Ozek made a damn good run for it, though. But somehow he's able to step it up even more. In the last 3 months, he had like a 1.3 rating, which is utterly insane. He's been performing so well. So this German side, I'm excited for them, and they're also in my overperformed little ranking. So I've got Prezi in there. I thought they overperformed for the expectations that they had coming into it, not necessarily the names attached to it. One win. That's mainly because they only drew one game in the entire tournament, and that was against Aurora, who then proceeded to drop out instantly thereafter. So very curious to see that out of Aurora. They must have just been a bit scared of the lower bracket, even though the previous time they also made it. I don't know. Either way, one win stepped it the hell up, and I'm so glad because we see quite a few return arcs right now. We obviously see Refresh, we see Boomage now getting back to the top as well. Obviously, Monty already kind of had that with SDY. They were were at the top, but I'm so glad that this one win lineup is finally starting to fire up. And then I've got Legacy in there as well. Obviously, Cold Zero, the big old name coming through and still performing well.
Yeah, quite a nice bow tie on that, Dan, I think. You know, one win, as you say, dropping one map the entire event, playing MIBR in the grand finals. It's like, yeah, again, one of these, like, weird online finals tournaments where namesake you probably have the likes of OG or a Monty or someone running deep, and it's like all of these teams have faded away, and it's one win MIBR, Prezi and alternate attacks in your top four, and then obviously Legacy, right, the fake Natty side that you're talking about, not too far behind them. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. I'm aware for time, so we'll push forward. If you're interested, definitely go back, give some of those VODs a watch. We've got to talk about a new region, Dan. I want to talk about a new region because Oceania is here. Nice of CCT, right? Because obviously we're waving goodbye to South America, as I say, sort of the end of, sorry, midway through to the end of this month coming, I think, right? Sort of October time, it will be all said and done. So we get a new region, 4 series of Oceania. I think it works a little bit differently, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a in the first series, we already had the first series go, but the top teams, the top 6 teams that make it, go into the next series. So Series 1 teams, if you come top 6, you get into Series 2. The 2 teams that go 7th and 8th drop into a closed qualifier, and effectively there's open qualifiers. You play in a closed qualifier. If you do well in the open qualifier, they kind of drop down and up. If people know, it's kind of like how ESL Challenge League works in their relegation system, where it's like the bottom teams drop down, they play in this like last chance qualifier where the top teams move up, the bottom teams get dropped out of the tournament. I don't think we need to talk about the tournament all too much because there's only 8 teams. It's the smallest CCT tournament there is in the system. Some of the bigger names, I guess, LFO are in there. Obviously, you've got Vertex in there as well. Some of these names in particular on teams that maybe you're lesser known of. Antic, right? You've got Jokes and Raz in there. Again, this isn't like the biggest tournament. It's not going to pull in the biggest numbers. But it's nice that we have some structure in Oceania. And I'm hoping that the point system is still going to be employed. I'll have to sharpen up on my knowledge. It would be nice to have some of the Aussie boys come out to Europe and play. Yeah, exactly. You get. Oh, is it 1? There you go. So
yeah,
one team.
Only the top team.
There you go. So one team gets it at least.
Yeah.
And that'd be nice to see. Obviously, Vertex won the first event. LFO came second. Vertex in this event looked unbelievable up until they played LFO. They played them in the upper bracket, lost 2-0, played Sunday School in the lower bracket. And one very nice thing, Dan, that Oceania do right over everywhere else, is it's a BO5 grand final. So LFO started a map up, or wait, they didn't even. Vertex came into the lower bracket. The BO5, for some reason, didn't go 1-0 up, but Inferno, Vertigo, Mirage, Nuke, Vertex, after losing in a BO3 to them 2-0, beat them 3-1 in a BO5, and ultimately secure the first bundle of 4 series worth of CCT points.
Are you a best of 5 enjoyer?
I am. Are you not? Is that what you're saying?
I feel like, because the most exciting point is the final game. So if it goes best of 5, 2-2, you're getting close to the end, that's the most exciting point. And for a 5-hour game to have the most exciting point be culminated into a very small portion. I feel like it's stretched too thin because you've got breaks, you've got technical pauses, you've got all sorts of things going on where I feel like it takes too long for the average watcher to be able to tune in, just watch that for an hour or so, and then you've got a pretty good idea of who's going to end up winning. So I'm personally not a huge fan, but I am a huge fan for it in regions like Oceania because they've gotten a lot less playtime, and obviously they've got the population size issue where they struggle to try and push for that top, but then they've also just got a lot less tournaments where the top teams aren't necessarily that interested because they can compete on an international scale, and to have that best of 5 and also the fight for your invite, which is the thing that you mentioned with 2 teams from the open qualifier having to fight for their spot. You've got so much action, and the floor, I think, is being pushed with that, which is hugely important in a region like Oceania. A tad bit surprised that we didn't see a team like Rooster in there. Greyhound, sure, that makes sense, or that makes sense with all the stuff that they've got going on, but Rooster, to a certain extent, I would have expected them to perhaps pop in there at some point. Either way, still huge for the region, this with CCT moving there.
Yeah, and Series 2 obviously currently ongoing as well, so if you're interested in checking that out, Vertex still in there, Sunday School, Mind Freak is still in there, Antic in there, so yeah, give it a watch. I think game's going on in a couple of days from now by the looks of things, so 2 days and it all kicks off again, lower bracket quarterfinals ongoing, so yeah, check that one out. It's going to be good fun. Early morning Counter-Strike down. I'm here for it. Wake up early, watch some Oceania. I'm here for that.
It's literally the only time that I feel like I've got somewhat of a normal job when I have to cast. You start early. You finish,
yeah, exactly. It's like a 9 to 5 job. You commit to the early morning wake up, but you're not. Like South America where you're up in the evening and go to bed at night. One more thing we wanted to talk about, Dan. One more thing we wanted to discuss is the CCT rankings, right? Obviously, we're talking about Oceania and we're talking about this this new region. There's a chance for points and a placement in the online finals. We want to talk about the rankings as well a little bit. It's on the CCT website if you're interested at home and you want to have a proper look. cctour.gg/regional rankings, or one word. Or just go to the website and just click the rankings tab. You can have a little read about the tournament as well, maybe if you're not clued up as much. Obviously, South America, the trilogy is coming to a close. We've still got one more event. Selva rounding that one out. Fluxo and Sharks up there as well. Sharks just had to forfeit a tournament, right, because they're out in Europe playing in South America. So big push for them. Case at 100 points. They're not too far off. Philos de Dios also in the runnings. Pain, Meta, Corinthians, all still there. One tournament change is all there, and it is top 3 teams. So those top 3 spots still can be taken by 5 or 6 teams in the rankings and in the runnings. So a really important Series 12, and it will be a nice way to round out the South American Counter-Strike for this year.
It's just not looking great for Pain right now, though, is it? Because they're sitting at 6th. 50 points behind, trying to make it onto the top 3, and then you've got a team like Case and Philos de Dios still ahead of you. Philos de Dios not because they're on 80 points together with them, but yeah, Pain, fair enough that they're struggling because they went for a core swap as well, which with it they still look relatively decent. Obviously not to the level that Pain as an org you would expect them at, but it's another part of trying to go through the motions, and that's the exciting stuff that you get in CCT, because when they're at the top, so when they're playing or trying to qualify for majors, that's kind of when you see the culmination of the team, when you see the best form. And in CCT, I feel like sometimes you see them still be rigid, still be rough around the edges. They need to squeeze a few things out. For example, Donk, right? I mean, he was spectacular, but you and me were probably aware of him way before all those HLCV threads were coming about Donk supremacy, Donk masterclass, Donk needs to be the president, stuff like that. Because we get a chance to kind of get in on the ground floor. But some more about the ranking. Monty at the top. West Europe is insanely competitive. It's still got Spirit Academy at the top there, which I wonder how that's going to go because Spirit Academy are obviously a completely different team now that they have lost their star players. I don't know exactly what's going to go on with that.
Yeah, it is a good point. Obviously, Apex not too far off. Saw, Harvu, all in the runnings. It's really interesting because you get 150 points if you win the tournament, right? So for a lot of these teams, they could actually still very much push to a position where they find themselves if they win an event. You know, if they make that playoff run, if they make the magic happen.
I think that's concluded.
They
West
can.
Europe, at
Oh,
least.
of course it is. Yeah, sorry. But point still stands, right? It's like you can still one tournament makes all of the difference. And what's really interesting is like Saw, had they have had one better run, had Harvu had one better run, it wouldn't have been Apex. You know, maybe Spirit Academy get moved down because, as you say, it's a different team to the one that collected all the points. Um, yeah, I'm keen to see how things go. What I find interesting, I was just quickly reading up on the rules about the CCT points. The organization owns 50% of the points earned in a tournament, and of the other 50%, each player gets 10% of those points. So technically, Spirit own half of those points. Two of the players also own 10% of the total points, so an extra 20% goes their way. Um, so I don't know, to be honest with you. If there's enough points there that they qualify. I mean, doing the maths real quick, 280 divided by 2 is 140 plus, what would it be? Plus 28 points, so what, 170 something? They technically would make it in on third if Spirit were to put in their main roster and have Donk and Artfrost play. So maybe Spirit are there in West Europe. Again, we'll see. Obviously, we were looking at the other regions. Oceania still clocking in those ranking points. Still 3 more to go, so no need to discuss there. Any other regions you wanna talk about? I think like East Europe, right, is still kicking off.
I just want to continue on your point real quick
Go
because
for it.
they might not even have to. They might not even try to do the math and everything involved. I'm so glad of that I don't have to do that. My goodness, all that administrative work. But currently, Spirit are sitting at second/third. They're both on 150 points together with Big in CCT North, which still hasn't concluded yet. That's going to the group stage has just finished, and the playoffs are going to happen the 3rd of October till the 6th of October. And whenever you're watching this, if that's still going on, go and make sure to give that a check out. Because if Spirit do manage to make it through and at least get a decent enough pointage that they get top 3, maybe they can even have both teams play. I don't think that that's the way that it works. But yeah, apart from that, I don't really have any regions because we obviously touched on Oceania. You know, you've got East Europe where currently Space are sitting at the top. Actually insane. 9 Pandas and Monty. Because that's the thing, right? You look at East Europe and you see the 3 teams that are up top and you kind of start doubting, okay, it's got Space, Sampi, and 500. Strong team, Sampi and 500, but not necessarily what we just mentioned, Spirit, Big. But 9 Pandas and Monty and Big are all just lower down, so definitely struggling.
Yeah.
I think 9 Pandas are an interesting team, and they're the times that I've been able to watch them, they've been spectacular. But yeah, East Europe could also still come to a decider here.
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of a funky time because there's no like close to ending other than obviously the trilogy of South America closing up. We've got one more series of that. Everything else we're still very much like waiting a little bit to see when they close. East Europe still going on as well. Oceania still going on. North Europe Series 2 still going on. Or sorry, the second part of North Europe. South Europe's come to a close. West Europe's come to a close. Central Europe's still kicking off as well. LFO boys are actually in the top 3 right now, so that's always cool to see. But again, you've got to be pushing for those points. You've got to be making those online finals. That's the whole point of CCT. And not many months left of this year to see who's going to be heading to that global finals. There's not many online finals left. We're heading into number 4 now, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like we've just finished series 3 of the online finals, and we've got 2 more to go afterwards. So this is it, right? This is the beginning of the end, I guess, for CCT. 2 more online finals, then the global finals, then the bow tie is put on CCT, which is pretty crazy to think about. A lot of Counter-Strike over the past year.
500, by the way. I just checked as well. And this is exactly what we meant earlier when we said there are so many teams playing in so many different tournaments at the exact same time that it's tough to keep it all in one part of the brain without looking anything up. I just checked 500. They didn't make it to the playoffs of CCT East, to the final one. So if anybody does remotely well, they are out. They won't be able to attend the online finals that you just mentioned. But those global finals is the one that I'm going to be keeping a keen eye on, man. That's going to be so exciting. Once it's the big culmination of like 1.5 years worth of playing CS. You need some consistency for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this one's going to go. The global final is obviously happening in 2024. That's about it, Dan. I don't think there's anything else I really want to talk about. I think we've tried to cover it as best as we can in as little time as possible. Yeah, I don't think. Have you got anything else to add?
No, sir.
There you go. Done. Dusted. Done deal. Thanks for listening, everyone, to the CCT podcast. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a subscribe here. Check out our Twitch channels. There's probably Counter-Strike going on right this second, whenever you're watching. It's always the way here at CCT. Dan, thanks for joining me. Thanks, everyone at home, for watching. We'll see you next time for another CCT podcast. Take care, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
A very complicated job, but I love simple things so much. One move. One push. One touch. One love. One click. One XBet.
Trying to get the skin of your dream for a long time but can't get it in any way? On our website you have a unique opportunity to get your favorite knife. Users on our site can hand out skins themselves, and participants need to fulfill some simple conditions. For example, watch a video or buy a case on our website. After that, you automatically become a member of the distribution. Go to the user giveaways tab and do what you like. Hellcase.